Hi guys, and welcome back to the Rach Active podcast. My name is Rach J. I am your host. I'm a coach and the founder of Core 30. I am so excited to welcome our guest to the show today. Now, she is a professional badminton athlete. She is representing Australia at the Tokyo Olympics in 2021. She's also represented the country at the 2014 and 2018 Commonwealth Games, where they placed fourth. She's won a gazillion titles, including 8 Oceania championship titles, 6 in the women's doubles, 2 in the mixed doubles. She's also the champion of the Canadian Open and US International for the women's doubles in 2019, all at the age of 25. Welcome to the show, Gronya Somerville.
Thank you for having me on the show. Good to be here.
Yeah, I'm really excited to chat to you. So thank you for taking the time to talk to me today. Now, that's quite a resume you've got there at such a young age.
Yeah, it's not that impressive compared to some other players as well. Like there's ones that peak super early and winning tournaments when they're 16 years old. So everyone's different.
It's impressive to me anyway. I feel like it seems like there's just so many things that you've achieved and, you know, you're so young. And what I sort of researched about you, going into this is that you started your journey, quite young in badminton, like 12, 13. And so, I'm really curious to know that whether, did you know when you started that you were good at badminton, or is this just something that kind of came up as a result of how you got into it?
So I got into it a really weird way. So it was actually through a talent identification program. So the Australian Sports Commission was funding badminton to have a talent search for girls my age, which was like 9 to 12 years old, who hadn't really played badminton before, to try and find the next badminton star. And I'd been athletic in multiple other sports like tennis, swimming, athletics, gymnastics kind of thing, but nothing had really caught my passion I hadn't really decided I wanted to do one for sure. And so I got into this program after the fitness testing day. And on that first day when we had a hit, I was just like, I love this sport. This is what I want to do. So it kind of just was like, this is it once the first time I played it.
It just kind of clicked like that. So what is it about badminton particularly that you love? Because obviously, tennis is kind of similar in a way, but it is slightly different, obviously. So what is it about this particular sport that really took to you, I guess?
The main thing that I love about it is that it has so many different facets. Like you have to have agility, you have to have speed, you have to have endurance because matches can go up to like 2 hours. It's the fastest racket sport in the world, going up to like 440 kilometers an hour. You have to just have it all. And then there's also a huge tactical component as well. So I kind of have this analogy comparing it to tennis, where I say tennis is more 2D because you're like hitting the ball like flat along the court, and it's like you can go straight, you can go cross. Yeah, there's some spins, but that's about it. Whereas badminton has this whole overhead game. So you're playing like the kind of tennis serve shot a lot often, and from there you can hit it high and loopy, you can go short. So in that aspect, there's much more tactical decision making, because from each shot you have so many more options, and that's one thing that I love so much about it, is like the tactical side of it.
Cool. So there's kind of like this strategy, like kind of decision making, I guess, that has to happen in the moment for you to play the game in a really efficient way, right? Well, that's really cool too. I don't really know that much about badminton, so it's really cool to hear. Yeah, we will have to. In all honesty, I reckon my dad's maybe taken me out like to the court maybe 1 or 2 times to play, and like I obviously had not continued, so not very good at it. So how did your journey evolve from, I guess, being introduced to the sport, loving the sport, but then going down this path of becoming a professional athlete in the sport? Because obviously that's been a journey for you, right, during your younger years as well, coming up. So how did that happen for you?
Because I got into it through this program, my whole process was kind of fast-tracked, and it was very like you are trying to be the best and go to the Olympics, whereas a lot of kids my age would have just kind of been playing for fun more and like as a social sport, like they still want to do well. But I was kind of groomed in a way to like go into the national team and then win medals. In that aspect, throughout high school, I was doing like before school trainings, like 5:30 to 7:30, and then I'd go to school straight after that, and I'd be like hobbling down the stairs because I'd have DOMs everywhere. I'd be falling asleep in class, and the teachers would be like, "Oh, it's okay," kind of thing. And then it got to my last year of high school, and I split my VCE, so I did 2 subjects in year 11 and 3 in year 12. So I kind of accelerated a little bit. And then in my last year, I was training a lot more, getting integrated into the national team, and traveling a lot more. So I missed like nearly half the year of my year 12 and did exams over in Thailand at like 4 a.m. and that kind of thing.
Oh my God, what a crazy life, especially at that age too, going through VCE and competing and then doing, having all that pressure. That's pretty incredible. So, how much of this is a really the thing that I like to ask, with different things, not just badminton or sport, but when people are, reach a certain level of success in a particular area, there's this concept of having part of it as being, part natural talent and part the hard work that you put in on top of it. Because you could be, naturally talented at something, but then not really do anything with it, and nothing really happens. So from your perspective, how much do you think your success has been attributed to your natural talent and then the hard work that you've put in?
Yeah, so personally, mine's an interesting combination because in badminton, 12 years old is actually quite late to start. Like most kids start when they're 5 or so. And in, Asia, China, Indonesia, they're getting taken out of school at like 12 to go professional, and they're just training 8 hours a day kind of thing. So for me, it was like mostly hard work. So when I started to get into it more and more, I was always getting to training early. I'm super I question the coaches a lot, question other players. I always want to improve. I always want to be like, how do I do this? So I'm very proactive in trying to improve as well. And then naturally, I'm not actually that good in the badminton technical sense because I started later. But physically and athletically, I'm quite naturally good in that way. So that's something that benefited me in the game. But yeah, it's a lot of hard work that has kind of got me to where I am, and always knowing kind of that I started behind has pushed me to try and catch up and put in the extra hours and try and train smarter and get that quality in when I couldn't have that kind of quantity compared to others.
Yeah, gotcha. I think, that's a really great way to kind of preface your training by having this sense that you have to catch up in a way, so it just drives you a little bit further, right? So obviously hearing what you've done throughout throughout high school, having to train before school and all that kind of stuff, which a lot of kids would not have had to do, get up early and do all that stuff on top of their just normal studies and whatnot. So how did you manage to cultivate your discipline and routine, just in terms of just making sure that you were doing that every day and staying on top of that routine?
Yeah, so I guess I've kind of just always had this desire in me to be the best. Even when I was doing those other sports, I always wanted to go to the Olympics, or when I was into circus, I wanted to go be in Cirque du Soleil. I've always had this desire to be at the pinnacle of whatever I was doing. So just knowing that I don't want to lose and I just want to beat people just made me want to be disciplined, because I knew that's what you had to do to get the results you wanted. My mum is super resilient, and growing up, she raised us 3 kids pretty much by herself. And I learned from her that you wake up, you don't want to do something, you just you have to just go do it. So I pretty much never miss training. Even when I'm sick, I'm my mentality is, if you can walk, if you can stand up, then you can stand on court and do something simple. So I push myself pretty hard in that aspect. And yeah, I just know that if there's that goal and you want to achieve it, then you're going to do whatever it takes to get there. Otherwise, why do you kind of have that goal?
Right. So it's just this kind of gung-ho, I've got to go for it kind of thing. So then where do you have this sense of when, you're pushing yourself too hard? Do you ever get to a point where you're I've pushed myself past my limits, and so I need to take a step back and have an active rest day or something like that? Do you have those moments or no?
Yeah, physically I've become super aware of my body, because I have had quite a few injuries, especially when I was younger, growing and that kind of thing. So I'm super aware of how my body's feeling, and I know now how far I can push it. And the good thing with badminton and sport in general is that there's usually other ways you can train around like a certain, so, you know, if my feet are sore, then I can do more technical stuff, or I can do upper body or stuff on the bike that's low impact. So it's kind of always finding alternatives and trying to still improve in some way.
Yeah. So in terms of physically, you know where your boundaries are, but then mentally, do you have a point where you're like, this is I've just pushed myself too far mentally, where it's like getting to me to a point where it's not healthy for me to keep pushing through that barrier?
Yeah, there's definitely been times when I have kind of hit that point. Probably the most recent one was the 2018 Commonwealth Games, when me and my partner had a lot of pressure to win a medal there. And we were like the first seed, and pretty much the whole year before, a lot of like spotlight was on us in our training. And yeah, we just felt a lot of pressure, and we kind of went too serious. So we stopped enjoying it. And then when the Commonwealth Games came around, there was a lot of like angst within our team because of how we had been treated like in a favorited kind of way. And yeah, it just had a really negative impact on our result in the end, because we finished fourth. And yeah, like mentally we were kind of, all our relationships and everything were disintegrating. So that was really a wake up call, and to just kind of come back to making sure we're enjoying stuff. And that also, like within sport, it's really easy because you want to do so well to go really hard, but it can also not be maintainable. Like, yeah, you might win a world championship when you're 16 years old, but if you want to quit by the time you're 18, then is that really what you wanted kind of in the end? Whereas thinking, you know, a lot of sports careers, even in tennis, you can see them playing up to like 38 years old. If you want to have that long career, you kind of need to make sure you're enjoying it, and there's so much travel involved. You need to make sure like you enjoy the people you're traveling with, you're fitting in the things that make you happy, as opposed to just grinding every single day, because it is pretty much like your life. Like it's just all year round. You are an athlete. So yeah, you have to make sure you enjoy it.
Yeah, so it's like an all-encompass. It's like a lifestyle, obviously, and one of those things where you would only be hanging out with other athletes, obviously, most of the time in training and whatnot, competing. So that's a really interesting point to know that you do need to incorporate some sort of balance in your life anyways. Otherwise, it isn't maintainable. I feel like even if it's not in professional sport, just generally speaking in life, that's just a really good way, you know, to approach life anyways. If you hit it too hard at work, or if you hit it too hard in, you know, one different area, the other areas suffer, you know. So what's the goal for you then? Because, you know, when you're talking about you know, maybe you want to hit like a title or something like that. But like you said, if you hit it too hard, you know, you're going to want to quit or something like that in a couple of years. So in terms of your goals as an athlete, do you look at your career as, I guess, a bigger picture where you know, what are your goals really in that space?
Yeah. So yeah, I'm at the point now where it is more like long term. So, you know, if I peak around like 30, then that's fine with me. As long as I'm still enjoying it and I feel like I'm improving and making progress, then I'm pretty happy with that. And obviously that I can support this lifestyle as well. That's important. So I'm not like living out of a shoebox or anything like that. But yeah, I think if I have those two things, progress and enjoying it, then I'm pretty happy with how I'm going. And yeah, hopefully from that, if I have those two things, then my level will show in titles and results.
And, you know, I'm really glad that you kind of picked up on the progress thing, because I guess, you know, so often too, like we hear people who have been successful, you know, to varying degrees in their respective areas, that when they reach a goal, it's not exactly what they thought it would be when they get there, you know. So you might have heard, you know, lots of people talk about this, where they, you know, aspire to a particular point, and then when they got there, it was not exactly what they thought it was going to be. So, you know, what has it been like for you? Have you had like have one of the titles that you have achieved now been one of your big goals that you managed to achieve? And then what was that experience like for you when you actually got there?
Yeah, so I guess the biggest achievement was when we beat a top 10 pair at the Dutch Open. And that one was really special as well, because it was a really tough match and we'd lost to this pair 3 times like a few months earlier. So it really cemented that we had improved and that we were up there with like the best in the world. Comparing that to like we won the Canada Open, which is the same level tournament, but we won it more easily. And it didn't, like, it was still special, but it's not as special, I guess, when you don't have to necessarily fight tooth and nail to get there. And like the circumstances can really change how you perceive that title, regardless of how prestigious it is. Mm-hmm. So that's why, maybe when there's people that are just winning everything, then they're like, oh, like it's too easy kind of thing, or it wears off. That can be part of it.
Yeah, so it's more the meaning around it is the almost like the process or the journey that you have to go through in order to achieve that goal. So, one of the things that I do like to use with my, coaching my clients, and it's not just in, fitness, but the goal tends to be a point, but it's who you have to become along the way, along the journey, that really makes that whole process meaningful. And the goal could be anything. It doesn't really matter because it's always going to shift. Once you hit that goal, you've got another goal that you want to go and achieve. So what are your goals now moving forward, into the future? Like, do you have like this massive goal that you now want to work towards?
Yeah, so the main one is the Olympics. So that was obviously meant to happen end of July this year and has been pushed back 1 year exactly. So yeah, our tournaments hopefully will start going from January next year. So just preparing for those, and then hopefully the Olympics goes ahead as well. So that will be the next major goal. And in the meantime, just trying to keep up my fitness. We are able to do a bit of on-court training, which is amazing. So just trying to improve what we can and try and come back fitter and stronger and better to go in the new year.
Yeah, I bet. Like, it's probably quite frustrating at the moment not being able to dive right into full training at the moment. But I know a lot of people listening, will be interested to know what your health and fitness routine is like, as a professional athlete. What do you do specifically to maintain your fitness? Do you have technique? Do you have strength and conditioning? Like, what's the cross training sort of, what does that look like for you?
Yeah. So outside of COVID times, usually we train 6 days a week. So Monday to Saturday, usually, with maybe 2 sessions a day on 2 days. So a morning and afternoon session. Each of those will go for about 2 hours. So that's like 16 hours a week on court. And the priority for us is the on-court stuff because we just need so many hours on court to kind of get all the technical aspects up to par. And then outside of that, I usually have 3 lifting sessions a week. Now with a bit more time, I split that into 2 lower body and 1 upper body because we are predominantly need to be super strong in our legs because we're jumping a lot, changing direction all the time. And then outside of that, we'll usually do 1 to 2 conditioning sessions. So on the bike or running, depending on what our bodies are like. Yeah, so that's mainly it. And then outside of that, we usually get to training 45 to 30 minutes beforehand, do our kind of prehab stuff, our warm up, and then afterwards we'll do maybe some core stuff and stretching and foam rolling, all that kind of stuff as well. I have usually physio twice, 1 to 2 times a week, and massage once a week. I haven't had massage in so long. It's like the first thing I want to do.
When people can actually touch people.
Yeah.
Yeah, that will be really, really nice. So, do you have, I'm really curious because this is so fascinating to me. Do you have a coach that oversees your whole training regime and sets this out for you? Or do you have specific coaches for the different parts of your training? Obviously, do you have a coach you work with specifically for badminton technique, and then, strength and conditioning coach, and then, how does it kind of work or look like?
So for our Australian team, we have a strength and conditioning coach, and then there's 2 badminton coaches. So one of them is the high performance director who is overseeing the whole program more. And he also does a lot more of the tournament planning side and hotels and travel and that kind of stuff. And then he'll also do match analysis and a few on-court sessions with us and travel to tournaments with us. And then we have another coach who does a lot of the on-court sessions. So he'll write the programs with the other coach and feed us and do all the stuff. It's called feeding, so that he'll hold all the shuttles and hit them to us. So
I thought you meant feeding you as in food.
No, so it's feeding the shuttles.
Right. Yeah. That makes more sense. I'm like, okay, that's really luxurious having someone feed you. So, do you have, obviously, it's quite regimented. You've got this program and, all your specific training. Do you have specific like pre and post tournament rituals and habits that you do? So prior to a match, are there certain things that you need to do to get your body and your mind, geared to perform well when you are on, basically?
Yeah, so with our tournaments, they pretty much last a week. So it might start on like a Tuesday or a Wednesday, and then the finals will be on the Sunday. So depending if you win or lose, you could play through to the Sunday or be done earlier. And with that, we usually arrive in the country the Sunday or the Monday. So not that early before it, because usually tournaments are back to back. So you're literally going from one country for 1 week to another one another week. We'll get a hit in the training hall beforehand, and then the day of the tournament, you get your the schedule for when you play the night before. So you don't actually have that much time to prepare. And before that, we will have seen who our opponent is and done some match analysis, watch some of their matches, figure out some of their weaknesses, some things that we need to try and implement to try and beat them. And then on the day of the match, so if we're in the morning, we'll probably just get up earlier and do a bit of body prepping, like some stretching, some quick, fast kind of agility stuff, and then head to the courts. And we'll get there about an hour beforehand, do our warm up, and then go on court. And if we have an afternoon match, we might do a bit longer session in the morning. So maybe if we have a chance to go to the courts and have a hit, we'll get our touch and also do some short, fast stuff as well. So that's pretty much how it works.
Yeah, nice. It's so, I think your life is just so incredible. It's so amazing. And you're so young as well. It's just insane. So, one thing I do like to ask a lot of my guests on the show is talking about lessons and life lessons. And, we learn life lessons at all different ages. And, sometimes we learn lessons that have nothing to do with the thing that we're actually doing, So I often talk about, I've been a professional actor for a really long time, and the biggest lessons I've learned from being an actor has been how to deal with rejection and failure. They're the big lessons of, and learning about myself, self-awareness, outside of the actual craft of acting. So I'm really curious to know what your biggest lessons have been from being firstly a professional athlete, but also badminton, more specifically. What are the biggest takeaways that you have learnt so far?
I guess some of the biggest ones are just consistency and putting in the hours and doing the boring stuff to get the results. Sometimes it's not all the glamorous stuff, and maybe you don't even notice the results as you're going because it's such small chipping away at it. But just having that foundation of all that kind of stuff and just steadily improving can reap such rewards. I guess in the travel sense, being self-aware of your mental health and kind of the things that you need to keep in your daily routine to keep you happy and content in your life is really important, because we're thrown into so many different environments and cultures and different people around us. So figuring out, how many times we need to call our family each week, or when we need to get outside if we're in a big city, or when we need to go by ourselves and find somewhere quiet, that kind of thing. I've learned a lot about that as I've traveled and been in all these different places.
So there's this element of self-care that comes into taking care of your well-being. I'm really curious then to know what your daily kind of habits are that you need to do to maintain your mental and emotional health. What do you need to do?
Yeah, I'm not super strict with it, but the main thing I always need is exercise. Even during lockdown, I know that some days you just wake up and you just want to stay in bed longer. But for me, that really just draws on, and then I just get really down about certain things and not being productive. And as soon as I get exercise done, I just feel so much, I don't know, content and I've done something with my life today, even if it's just lifted things, Yeah. So for me, that's really important. And then definitely the connection, realizing when I need to talk to people and have that connection, because I'm really content being by myself and doing my own thing. But sometimes, I don't realize that I need it, but I know I do. So that's really important as well for me.
Yeah. I'm quite similar to you actually. The movement thing, it has to happen. It just, for my mental health, I feel like it's just so good. Like you said, makes you feel like you're productive and you've done something, even if it is, if I take an active rest day, it's at least a walk. But, if you're doing a proper workout or whatever, it's, you've moved your body, you get those endorphins going, and it does do something chemically in your body where you literally feel just so much better for moving. And the same thing with connection, I feel, especially during this time. It's, quite a difficult time we're all going through, with lockdown, that it is so important to maintain that connection with people. So, I'm kind of glad that you touched on this aspect of mental health, because this is one thing that I know that, you have opened up about publicly, and your experiences dealing with, particularly, with your brother and things that have happened with him in terms of mental health and illness. So can you kind of, talk about that and what that experience was like for you and how that has impacted you?
Yeah. So personally, I haven't really had many issues with experiencing mental health stuff. But yeah, my brother has, he committed suicide the start of last year. And prior to that, he'd had schizophrenia and bipolar disorder and kind of things coming and going. And he was in and out of psychiatric wards all the time. So growing up, that was, that really built up my resilience and kind of threw me into very traumatic and high stress situations when you are around somebody that is so up and down and volatile. So yeah, it was really, I had to grow up very fast with that, and it had to teach me how to take care of my family, take care of my mum, who was, his main carer. And just seeing this whole side of like the mental health system and how vulnerable it is, it just, I grew up very fast being around that.
Yeah, I bet. First, I'm so sorry to hear about your brother, because I do, I've never experienced anything like that, and I can't even imagine, what that would be like to go through something like that, with someone so close to you in your family as well. And also then, being around, like you said, being around that and having to grow up really fast, and look after your family. How were you able to do that? I mean, at such a young age, and then having to also, you've got this professional career at such a young age as well. How were you able to manage all of that?
Well, I think when you're in that situation, you don't really have a choice. Like, it's your family and you want to take care of them and do whatever you can to protect them. So I was just always trying to put my family first, and sport really kind of was my escape, both literally as well, when I could travel overseas and like I didn't have to have that responsibility anymore because I wasn't there. So, it was hard when I was away to know that I couldn't help out and be there. So there was a bit of guilt, but also it was kind of an escape, and it made me really appreciate like the training when I could just, you can't think of all that stuff when you're training, because you're just trying not to get smashed by a shuttle, and you're just putting everything into your training. So yeah, it was definitely a good distraction for me. And I think it definitely helped me from a lot of stuff that could have alternatively been my life, I think.
And I do feel that this connection between movement, and the thing is, a lot of the guests, pretty much all of my guests that I've spoken to, and, people in my life outside of the podcast, we all come to different movement practices at different points in our life. And often when it is, when we go through something difficult or stressful that's going on in our personal life, we find our way, or a sport or a movement practice finds us at that particular time. And helps us through, because it gives our mind something to focus on. Obviously makes us feel good in our body, but gives us that outlet, I suppose, to unload that stuff that we're dealing with outside, of that sport. For me, it's been boxing, which is a sport that I never would have ever thought that I would particularly really enjoy improving on. And the effect that it has had on my life, I feel the same. It's been the same as what you've sort of said. It's kind of like it's giving something to you to kind of, I guess fuel you, or like at least restore that energy, that mental energy for dealing with the other crap that you've got going on in your life, right?
Yeah.
That kind of thing. Yeah. So how do you think, this whole experience, because that it's such a big thing to have gone through, and, how do you think that this has changed your perspective of life and your outlook on life?
Yeah. Well, I was actually in Malaysia when my brother did pass away, and I had to play a tournament that day, and I was just trying to switch back to like athlete mode and not wanting to lose and that kind of thing. But from then on, it's really just made me appreciate kind of how little time that we can have with people. Like, people can walk outside, get hit by a bus. Like, you never know when you're going to see someone again. So really just being so expressive of how much I care about somebody and what they mean to me, and making sure to check in on friends and all that kind of thing. So yeah, just being grateful for the things you do have, and like not getting caught up on all the dumb stuff that life has.
Yeah. I really love that. I feel that, especially, and too, like with COVID, I feel like this particular period of time has brought that stuff to the surface too, just all the things that we maybe would take for granted, pre-COVID or pre-big, massive challenges in our lives happening. It forces us to just go, hang on a second, my life is really good, what I have in my life, and to be grateful. So I really love that approach to life. So one other thing that I'm really curious to talk to you about, because in all honesty, I haven't spoken about this to many people. Obviously, we both have Asian heritage and, both being Australian. I'm really curious to know what your experience has been like growing up in Australia. And you have both Asian and Caucasian background, right?
Yeah. So I'm half Chinese, half Australian.
Yeah. So what has your experience been like? And in terms of culturally, how have you felt? Have you felt like you've fit in? Because I know for me, I never feel like I fit in anywhere, growing up in Australia. In drama class, I'd always be like the one Asian actress, or like even in the Pilates studio, there's like one or two other Pilates trainers that I know that are Asian, right? But then growing up, quite Aussie, you also don't fit in with the Aussie people. So what's your experience been like?
Yeah, I guess I'm kind of unique. Like I've never experienced any ounce of racism like ever, which is kind of weird. Yeah, I mean, it's
That's
great.
Crazy. It's great. Yeah. But
yeah. It's sad that we think that's weird that there isn't racism.
Right. I know.
Yeah.
Oh God.
Yeah. But I think I've never had that thing of not fitting in, because I've always had so many different cultures of friends. Like in primary school, I've just always had I've had Asian friends. My best friend now is Kenyan. I've just been surrounded by so many different cultures in going through school, that I've never felt not part of anything really. And it's funny because my dad passed away when I was 3 years old, and he was the Chinese side of me. So, but he was also very westernized when he was came to Australia with his mum when he was 6 years old. So I didn't really have that Asian upbringing, because I was mainly raised by my mum, who is the Australian side. And then it was funny when I found badminton, because in badminton, especially in Australia, it's so Asian dominated because of just the culture that that Asia has with badminton. So the parents will play and then they'll get their kids playing. And so it's just the sport that they go to more, as opposed to, tennis or swimming or that kind of thing. So then I felt like in badminton, I wasn't as Asian. So I was kind of getting this cultural education through my sport. And I was, traveling to China every year. And my first few tournaments were in Taiwan and Singapore. And so I was kind of reconnecting with this Asian side of me through the sport, which was really amazing. And through that, I wanted to start learning Mandarin Chinese 4 years ago. So I've been learning that, and I'm have the basic fluency.
How the hell did you do that? Oh my goodness, guys. So just so you know, freaking learning Chinese is the hardest freaking thing to do as an adult, because I know, when you're a kid, it's easy to obviously pick it up. But oh my goodness, that's amazing.
Yeah, so I started learning that because I deferred my sports science degree when I was traveling so much. And I just like to still have the routine of learning stuff and getting educated. So yeah, I picked up Chinese, and I've been
You're going to have to teach me how, because I one of my agents one time said, you need to learn how to speak Chinese so that you can go for these Chinese roles. I'm like, I'll try. And then looking at the thing, I'm like, this is just so hard. And I maybe did it for a couple of weeks. I'm like, I just don't know how I'm going to ever pick this up. There's just it's a very difficult language to learn, right?
Yeah. It's super hard. There's like 10 million, there's just so many characters, but it's really interesting once you actually start to learn it to understand that like the strokes and their characters are more like based off images of the word. So it kind of starts to make sense because they'll put, how there's all those different components to one character. Like each one will mean like something might mean water and something might mean mouth, and then it'll be like drink, that kind of thing. So it kind of has its own little system.
Gotcha.
But it kind of makes you understand as well how Asians have, or Chinese have that, what's the word? That stereotype of being, so good at maths and everything, because even just learning that language is like, you get so many study habits out of that. There's so much repetition and so much discipline, even just simply learning the language. So it kind of makes sense that they're just freaks at a lot of other stuff to do with like learning and numbers and whatnot.
Yeah. Oh, that's amazing. And it's almost like you learn the culture through the language, in a way, because there is so much, which is really cool, because I feel like, like you said, going into badminton, which, when I was kind of doing the research before our conversation, I thought badminton was an Asian sport originally, but it's not, because it's dominated by Asia now, but it was originally, I think, founded in British India. So, and it was really popular with Europeans, back in the day. And then obviously now it's become quite dominated by, Asian athletes. So, that's really cool that you're able to connect back into Asian culture through the sport and then through the language. So, how else has it been for you, just, I guess, because obviously your mum is Caucasian. And then in terms of having family that are Asian, are you still connected to Asian family that you have?
Yeah, so we have a bit of family in Melbourne and Sydney that I see quite often. And then also when I do go back to China, I usually catch up with family there because I have family in like Hong Kong, Guangzhou, Beijing. So that's really nice as well. And we went on a big family holiday there when I was 8 years old, so early 2000s. And so it's really good to stay in contact with them and learn more about our ancestry and that kind of thing as well.
Yeah, I feel like this is something that I feel like I need to do more of, is connect back to my Asian heritage. Growing up in Australia, I feel like I'm so westernized, and so, my parents brought me up so Aussie that I really and I don't even, most of the circles that I run in or industries that I work in are mostly Caucasian people. So therefore there is this disconnect, I think the most that I've taken away from my Asian parts of upbringing are the shoes at the door and and getting red packets, which is like, the best thing ever, but that's it.
Yeah.
So I'm really excited that we got to connect, actually. So thank you so much for joining me on this episode. I feel like we all learnt a lot in terms of, your process and understanding the behind the scenes of being an athlete and what it really takes to, succeed in any area of life, really. So thank you so much for being on the show.
No worries. It's been awesome. Thanks for having me.
So guys, thank you so much for listening. If you like this episode, make sure you screenshot it and you can tag Gronya at Gronya Somerville and also at Rach Active. And I'll catch you on the next episode of the Rach Active podcast.